guys. It is a miracle that I'm even here tonight. But give me a thumbs up if you can see me and hear me. I scheduled a live in the YouTube area and then it couldn't, I couldn't figure out how to get into it. All right. Dad, could you go and see if on my primary YouTube channel, if it's distracting people with another live? If there are 2 live streams going. Guys, if you could just comment and let me know if you can see me, hear me, if there's any malfunction between, what I did was I scheduled a live and then I couldn't figure out how to get into it from my phone. So I just started a live straight up. So let me know. Okay, somebody said it's working. Works great. Hello. Toll 192, Charlie. Thank you guys so much for being here. I'm so excited. Okay, people are coming in. What? Looks good? Okay. My dad says it looks good. Okay, guys, so excited to be here with you tonight. My dad's giving me some updates on well, Dad, if you were watching it from in there, then it's okay. Yeah, it's good. I'm excited to be here with you tonight. We have had some crazy weather here in Northeast Texas, so I'm actually not streaming from my regular studio. I'm streaming from my dad's office, so this is what you're seeing behind me. It's really exciting. I'm going to answer 20 sheep questions tonight and tell you a little bit about why I took a month off of YouTube. But if you guys would warm up the chat, tell me where you're at, what you're farming. If you're just farming hopes and dreams right now, just tell me you're farming hopes and dreams. That's absolutely acceptable. I'm in Northeast Texas. I am farming Dorper sheep. I am on 30 acres right now. We have had some insane storm systems rolling through and it wiped out our power. We lost it last night, has not come back on. So I am actually made a trek to the city and I'm live streaming from my dad's office right now. Charlie says, nice office, Dad.
Thank you, Charlie.
Dad says, thanks, Charlie. Kat is in Westbridge, BC. SPKLD is in Idaho. He does Dorper sheep. Pamela, Northeast California, registered Targies. Ooh, tell me what that is. Is that a sheep, Pamela? Tom is in Niagara Falls, New York. Kat S says, hopefully Icelandic sheep in a few months. Farm the Heart is in Bethlehem, Georgia. Farming Meshan pigs and Nubian goats, hoping for sheep soon. Guys, tonight I'm going to answer 20 sheep questions. A lot of you came through Instagram and left your questions in prep for tonight's live stream, and then some of you left them here on YouTube in prep for tonight's live stream. So I'm going to answer those tonight and chat with you guys for just a little bit. I took a 1-month YouTube break, and I'm so excited to be showing you guys for the first time here on YouTube what I spent my 1-month YouTube break on. What you're looking at here is a paper copy of the cover of my book, which kind of feels weird and surreal to be saying that, but my book, The Basics of Raising Sheep on Pasture. It's still kind of sinking in that this is actually happening, but I had the opportunity about a month ago to begin the process of publishing a book. This is a compilation of the past 3 years. You guys know that I've been video documenting it here on YouTube. I've also been photo documenting it. This is the book that I wish existed 3 years ago when I started raising sheep on pasture. A lot of the resources I read were for cows. A lot of the rotational grazing information was in the context of cattle. And I thought, okay, maybe this will work for sheep. But there was a lot that I had to do to amend those systems for cows to make them work for sheep. And it's gonna be all in this book. I want to tell you guys tonight, please, in the link in the description box below, there is a subscription for my newsletter. I'm gonna have all the details on the launch of this book coming up, but I'm really excited to share it with you tonight. Okay, it's a little bit crumpled in the middle. It's from me hugging it so much. I'm just really excited. All right, that is that, and that is why I have been gone from YouTube for the past 20 days. So I'm really excited to release that probably mid-August, guys. Keep your eyes on mid-August. Make sure you're on my newsletter list, and I'm really excited to share a lot of behind the scenes for that. Mariah Grosh, hi, thank you so much for being here. Jeremiah Chupik, thank you so much for being here. Yeah, Jeremiah, it's okay. Thanks for saying hi. Anyways, watch the thunderstorm and get in the basement if you need to. Tom says, neighbor farms the sheep. Honey Hollow says, good, I didn't miss much. Nope, I have not started the meat of the program yet. But I did announce my book, guys. That's why I've been gone for 20 days off of YouTube. Charlie, Bakerville, California. Worked on farms in Nebraska long ago. Joel Morris, Farming Hopes and Dreams, way to go. Matthew is asking why Dorper sheep. That's a good question, and it's actually on the list of I'm going to answer tonight. Pamela says Targis are a newer wool sheep developed in the 1950s. All right. Honey Hollow says I run into the same problems with goats, not much info. Yeah, it was a very difficult thing. Thankfully, a lot of the process is translated, but it took a lot of amendment in the systems. The book itself is going to be mostly pictures. Pictures are worth 1,000 words. And it's going to be pictures of setup, pictures of weird things. I even brought some pictures tonight to address some of the questions. These are more proof pages from my printer. But things like how to look for worms in sheep. I mean, this is just a page that basically goes from healthy to almost dead to this is actually a dead animal right here. That's one of the most frequently asked questions I get a lot. I guess I'll go ahead and just segue into tonight's questions. All right. All right, the first one is a question I got, and it says, how old are lambs at weaning? So my lambs are about 4 months old when I wean them. Some people do early weaning, but in order to do early weaning, you have to supplemental feed, get them up to like 45 or 50 pounds. I don't supplemental feed my lambs, so I will wean them off their moms at about 4 months old. By that time, with the Dorper breed being what it is, they're about 1/3 to 1/2 the size of their mom. So they're really, really big lambs at weaning, and they go straight onto an alfalfa hay. Another question was, somebody asked, do you put your lambs in a separate rotation? The answer is I tried that one year. It was not sustainable from a time perspective or from an energy perspective for me personally to run 2 rotations on 30 acres for 2 groups of sheep. So over the past 2 years, I've just weaned my lambs straight into a clean pen, fed them alfalfa hay while their moms dry off. Usually takes anywhere between 4 and 8 weeks, and then I'll just put them back into the regular pasture rotation. Anthony Leek says, give the shepherdess a thumbs up. Please do, guys. Give us a thumbs up on this. All right, Jeremiah asks, how much is the book? It's not published yet. Mid-August is going to be when it is published, and that is when you will get some information on that. All right, thanks for being here, Zen, Jamin, Alex Barnes, Murdoch, Roughstock, Kat, Jeremiah. All right, thanks guys so much. Next question is, I wish I would have put the names next to these guys because I appreciate your questions. But one question came in was, how do sheep handle the heat? I'm in Northeast Texas. It is really hot. It is really humid. They do just fine, but I make sure they have plenty of shade. You want to make sure there's a large tree in the paddock, something that they don't, I mean, they'll naturally clump together, but just something where they will have plenty of shade and they're not fighting for shade. Also have some incredible DIY shade structures that my mom invented. Those are going to be in the book, DIY, on how to do those, but I also have a video here on YouTube if you want to search DIY shade structures for sheep. The way I was running my paddock rotation was that we don't have very many trees. So what I would do was I would carry these portable shade structures that we made from paddock to paddock, and that provided the shade that my sheep needed. Another hack that I did, I think it was 2 summers ago, when my sheep just really, I didn't have a good watering system in place, and to be honest, I don't think I was providing them with enough water. I think a lot of them went into heat stress, and so what I did to sort of amend for that was number one, I got proper watering set up, and then I put some apple cider vinegar in their water to just momentarily kickstart consumption again, and that really, really worked well in an extreme heat wave that we had there. So that is the answer on sheep handling the heat. Another question was, what type of shots do I give my sheep? I give my sheep a C, D, and T, and this is a jab. It's the V word, but I'm not sure if they're still censoring that here on YouTube. But essentially, I give that to them at about 3 weeks of age, and then there's a booster that comes about 21 days later. I get a lot of questions as to why I do this, because I am in the regenerative community where vaccines are kind of like, sometimes they're evil, sometimes they're not. I'll do it for my breeding stock, but I will avoid it for my meat animals. If I'm gonna have an animal that's in my system for 8 or 10 years, giving me lambs every year, CD&T, it guards them against tetanus and overeater's disease. So tetanus, I mean, they're on pasture. There could be rusty metal. Tetanus is also in horse manure, so keep in mind that if you're running like a multi-species pasture. And then overeater's disease is just for things like too much rich feed or too much rich pasture. I mean, there was last year a situation where all of my sheep broke into my sister's chicken feed, and the flock, within the space of like 28 minutes, they ate 8 or 10 bags, and one of them did die of bloat, but the rest were just fine. And I had just refreshed my CD&T shots that year. I was extremely grateful, but I think I would have lost a few more if I didn't have those in place. All right, leave your questions as well, guys, in the live chat. I'll try to get those after I'm finished with the list of 20 here. Somebody asks about pregnancy toxemia and milk fever. I have not encountered either one, but I have made preparations for the milk fever. I thought that a sheep had it one year, and what I was advised to do, it was from a fellow sheep tuber here. He is Rolling O Farms. I enjoy his videos, but I reached out to him and he said what I usually do if I find that in my sheep is I will give them a bovine calcium, and it's just like a bovine calcium supplement sold for cows, but he gives it to sheep. So keep that in mind. I went ahead and bought a tube of that. It was sold locally, so I have that in like my first aid in case anything goes down. The toxemia, the pregnancy toxemia, is usually when the sheep is underweight or underconditioned, and then she has like 3 babies inside of her. I think that's the condition, and she just can't, basically it's like a blood sugar thing. She can't keep up with nourishing the lambs and nourishing herself, and she goes into a tailspin at the end of pregnancy. The only way to really cure it is to deliver the lambs. I personally have not looked into any cures for pregnancy toxemia. If you guys are watching and you have some input on pregnancy toxemia, please leave it in the comments. I've never encountered that on my farm. All right. Somebody asks, how many sheep for a first timer? Depends on, I would start with 4 moms and a dad. So 4 ewes and a ram. And it will allow you to get your feet under you to get an idea of what you're gonna be dealing with on a large scale. If you can master it on a small scale, you're gonna have so much of an easier time on a large scale. So I'm always telling people, just start with 4 or 5 ewes and a ram and get going that way. And then they followed up the question with how many sheep did we start with? We started with 36. So we kind of had, as beginners, a bit of a rough time starting with that many, and that's kind of why we always say just start small. A lot of the problems you're going to encounter on a small scale, it would be very difficult if they hit you on a large scale. And we know that just from personal experience. It gets kind of overwhelming, especially when those 36 all start having babies and you have all of a sudden 36 or 50 lambs that you're also taking care of. Just start with 4. You're going to have 6 or 8 lambs in that first go around, and your flock is really going to grow quickly. If you start to retain your favorite ewe lambs, you'll be able to grow really, really fast. But start small. Start small. Okay, so this is a question that is related to the page that I brought from my book. Guys, if you're new to the room, I took 20 days off of YouTube to write a book. And this is not a book as much as it is a photo journal of the basics of raising sheep on pasture. Newsletter list down below. I'm just going to reiterate it. Please be on that newsletter list. I'm going to be releasing more information as we approach release date in August. But this is a page from one of the books, one of the pages from the book. And this is a check of the eyelids. And this is how I check my sheep for worms. The worm that we're checking for here is the barber's pole worm, and that's going to be the worm that takes your sheep down really, really fast. So here is this page. This is a very healthy eyelid. So what I'll do is I'll just pull down on their eyelids. I will check and see how heavy the load is within that animal. This is very healthy. This is something I would not deworm. This is very pale. This needs a dewormer very quickly. And this is an animal that just died. So unfortunately that happens, but you do not want to underestimate worms at all. How do I treat for the barber's pole worm? Once I find it, I use Cidectin. And again, I get kind of a hard time about this using conventional dewormers, again, being in the regenerative circle. But guys, I have not found a natural method that works consistently for a sheep on a pasture-based system. You'll hear about garlic, diatomaceous earth, herbal dewormers. You want to be using those on a sheep that looks like this, that's healthy, to reinforce that really good health. But when you've got a sheep like this, or that's too late, if you've got a sheep like this, you need to treat that sheep, and you need to take it seriously if you want to save that sheep. So that is what I use for my sheep there. Yeah, Mom Rena says Sandy Brock has issues with pregnancy toxemia, but she uses grain. Yep. All right, Pamela says, do you irrigate and rotate pastures often? I do not irrigate. We have about 50 inches of average annual rainfall up here, and I do not have to, but I do rotate pastures often, about every 48 hours during the growing season, and then once a week during the slow season. So that's how frequently my pasture rotation goes. Guys, hit the thumbs up if you are in this video watching tonight. Thank you so much. I'm answering 20 sheep questions, and I let you guys know as to why I was gone from YouTube for a month. Okay, so I want to just go through, that's the primary indicator with respect to the barber's poleworm, which is going to take your sheep down really fast. You want to feel the jaw line as well. Sometimes a sheep will develop what is called bottle jaw. I don't have a photo of that, but it's going to be in the book. But the bottle jaw is basically where just a lump forms on the jaw and it becomes really sloshy, like a water bag. That is extreme barber's poleworm infestation. Some other preceding symptoms of just an overload is they're going to be really sluggish. They're going to be laying around a lot and they're not going to be chewing their cud. If a sheep, I'm out there on pasture every night, so I'm looking at over all of my sheep every night. And what I want to see is if they're laying down, I want to see that they're chewing their cud. If they're laying down and their heads are heavy and their ears are drooping flat and they're not chewing their cud, I look at that sheep a little bit closer because that says there's something wrong. That's body language that tells me there may be something wrong with them. So keep those in mind. They'll be really slow. If you move paddocks regularly, you're gonna wanna see if one is significantly lagging behind day after day. That is gonna be a symptom of a parasite overload. So just be watching on all fronts there. Okay, I'm gonna segue. Somebody asked, they said, help, my sheep has bottle jaw, what do I do? So they asked if there was anything beyond treating with just a dewormer that they could do for bottle jaw, and the answer is I do have something that I run through for bottle jaw because it is pretty extreme infestation. So again, I will deworm with a dewormer that works, and this is Cydectin, that's what I use for sheep. I wanna give a shout out, guys, that you can find all of these supplies at shepherdess.com, including my recommended dewormer and the vitamins I'm getting ready to shout out here. So after I'm done with giving them a really good dose of that dewormer, I will run an Anemex 100 shot. This is an extra label product, use at your own risk, but I have to say it has been a lifesaver, quite literally, at my farm. What extra label means is that I work in collaboration with a veterinarian. This is FDA approved for pigs, but with vet oversight, I use it on my sheep. But it's Anemex 100. I will give them 2 mils of this. It's an iron shot, and I'll give that to them in the thigh after I give that dewormer. And then I will also follow up with the VitaJect B, and that's good for sheep. And I'll do about 7 mils. And that's a 3-way treatment that I'll run for the bottle jaw. And then I also have a Nutri-Drench, which is for sheep and goats. It's like a molasses vitamin supplement. I'll drench them with a little bit of that afterwards as well. And if they survive past a week past that bottle jaw and that treatment, it's not a bad idea to go ahead and run another treatment on them of the same nature. So that is my bottle jaw treatment. Let me see if I have a picture. No, I don't have a picture of bottle jaw. It's gonna be in the book though. And again, all of those supplies are available at shepherdess.com. It really supports my work when you shop there, so thank you very much for doing it. All right, so question number 11 is your setup a one-man job or do you need help? So you guys, for some context, I'm running about 60 ewes at the moment on 30 acres. The answer is no, I do need people to back me up. Now, they're not out there with me every day. 7 out of 10 days, I am alone working the pasture, but there's that 3 out of 10 days that I need help loading a sheep for delivery, that I need help with working the sheep or shedding gates or just having someone follow me. Usually it's a young person, but I do need help about 3 days out of 10. And it's really important that I have someone who can back me up. And I do, thankfully, really do. Did you guys just hear that? That was kind of, I'm sorry, that was disruptive. All right, we're gonna keep working down. I've got 20 questions here, guys. I'm about halfway through. If you have any questions that you wanna leave tonight, I'm just gonna hang out for just a few more minutes, finish up my list that I have from Instagram. If you guys wanna follow me on Instagram, it's harmonyfarms.dorpers. If you guys wanna follow me on Facebook, it's also Harmony Farms Dorpers, but these are questions I'm answering that came through Facebook, Instagram, and then here in the YouTube. Okay, yeah, this was just the other question. They asked, do you rotate the weaned lambs? And again, as I answered in the first place, no, I do not run a separate pasture rotation for my weaned lambs. I will wean them onto a fresh alfalfa hay in a clean pen. I'll let their moms dry off, and about 4 to 8 weeks later, I will return them to the primary pasture rotation. So I only have one rotation on my 30 acres right now. Again, I've tried to run multiples, and I almost hit a breaking point physically. I mean, it's possible, but probably not very sustainable from an energy perspective with everything that I'm doing. So that is what I do. And I've been really happy with that program, by the way, for weaning my lambs. All right, another question was, do you graze your sheep with any other farm animals? Yes, I have a very small cow herd right now. It's just 3 cows, but they are in the pasture rotation with all of my sheep. They are great. I really enjoy grazing the cows. They graze alongside the sheep with no problems. They're extremely gentle. I allowed for sort of an acclimation period before adding the cows in with the sheep flock. And I did that because, well, basically what they were doing was they were grazing side by side. So the sheep would be right here, and then the cows would be right here, and then the polywire would be separating them. I did that so that they kind of came to understand who they were, what the sheep were, before they were fully joined. But that's what I did to acclimate the cattle to the sheep before joining them to making them a flurd. But since then, there's really been no deliberate effort on behalf of the cows to trample or harm the sheep in any way. If I've had any problems, it's been with the sheep. They are the troublemakers. I'll supplement the cattle with some cubes over winter because I will stockpile graze whenever I can instead of feeding hay. So I'll protein supplement the cattle. The sheep get very jealous and very possessive of the cattle supplement. So I have to separate the cows when I do run that supplement because the sheep do not get any supplement unless they actually need it, but the cattle is more routine. All right, guys, I'm going to come here to the comments really quick and get to some of your questions in the comments. Let's see. All right, so Mark Morris, thank you for being here, Mark. He says, have you considered using sonic boom technology to improve your pasture grasses? It basically uses sound that is the frequency of songbirds and causes the plants to thrive. I never have. We have a lot of birds around us, though, so I probably don't need it. All right. Farm the Heart says, in the goats we call it a FAMACHA check. She's referring to this, basically this little chart. And I love the FAMACHA card, and I do have one printed out and I use it, but I'm always second guessing myself with respect to, okay, what does that actually look like in an animal? It's peach, but what does that actually look like? So in the book, I actually have real animal eyes, and that is known as the FAMACHA chart. And you can use the, I think you can go through like a certification, a paid class, but I never did. I learned to watch for it. I Love Sheep says, I started my first sheep flock last year. It started off with 4. Way to go. What breed, by the way? I'm curious. Leslie's Legacy Lounge says, what about Basic H from Shakely's for worms? That's a really good question, and I talk about that a little bit in the book, but I'm going to give you the rundown of that chapter. I learned how to do a fecal egg counts from home. Used the microscope and one of those little charts. So I basically tried the Shakely's for the sheep, did a drench, monitored fecal egg counts, and nothing positive resulted. The worms did not go away with the Shakely's Basic H. Joel Salatin lists it as a good option for cattle, but cattle are, if you're going to scale on a 1 to 10 with respect to how much animals struggle with worms, sheep would be a 9, goats would be a 10, cows would be a 4. Like that's on a scale of 1 to 10 how much those animals kind of struggle with worms. So maybe it was because, or is because, sheep are just more sensitive to parasites, and that's why the Shakely's did not cut it for me, but it didn't. And I literally monitored under a microscope the worm load in the animal because I was super curious about that myself, and it didn't work. Anthony says, do you burn your pastures? Wondering if that helps with parasites. The answer is no, not regularly, but what I'll do is the cows will come and basically graze the pasture down really, really short, at least once a season, and that lets the sunlight just get straight to the soil, straight to the grass, and it does sort of that same thing with respect to pasture sanitation, with respect to the parasites, and that's why I like to run my cows together with my sheep, because there are just a lot of benefits. Number one, I love looking out there and seeing a couple cows in the middle of the pasture, but they also have some benefits with respect to parasite management. The cows eat up the parasites that bug the sheep and make the sheep healthier, and vice versa. Somebody asked about diarrhea. They said diarrhea help, which I really hope that they were talking about their sheep. I definitely think they probably were. But Daniel Potter seconds the question. This is just another picture from the book. We struggled a lot with it in our early years. I think what this was just the late phases of coccidiosis. And this, okay, I'm gonna reference another dewormer that I absolutely really, really like for diarrhea. Now, I wanna say that there are two sides to diarrhea, which number one is the good side. Number one is that when sheep go from low quality feed to high quality feed, they'll get runny stools. It's totally fine. They'll level out in just a matter of a couple weeks, or maybe just add a little bit of hay or roughage to their diet and see if it dries up. But this, you want to look for body condition. So you can see these guys are a little bit skinny as well as having the really bad diarrhea. This was just a severe outbreak of coccidiosis, and that just needs to be treated. This is the best product I've ever found to treat it. Total Toltrazurol. Again, this is available at shepherdess.com. Absolutely great. Free shipping on over 75 there. This is a very gentle product. It works. I was talking with Tim at Lanessa Farms, and he said it works slowly. So when you administer it to your lambs, they will have the advantage of being able to have this, build up an immunity against coccidiosis and cocci, that's the parasite, but also it beats it back to where it doesn't kill them. It doesn't totally severely damage them, because what coccidiosis is it's a parasite that basically eats holes in the lining of your lamb's gut. If it is allowed to just basically get out of control, they ultimately die, starve to death on a full stomach. They'll get pot bellies. Diarrhea is not always a symptom, but that happens in the late phases. What you'll notice mostly is a lamb is growing great. First 8 to 12 weeks, just keeps chunking up. Then all of a sudden it stops. Like it stops growing as fast. And then it gets a big swollen belly and its little legs get skinny. And that's typically, those are symptoms of coccidia. All right. Adventures in Goat Farming, thank you for being here. In northeastern Minnesota, guys, if you haven't yet, please drop where you're from and what you're farming. He is raising Spanish neat goats. All right, Tim says we are supposed to get 5 ewes this weekend. Dorper, Katahdin Cross. Congratulations, Tim. It's going to be one of the best experiences of your life. Just do all you can to prepare and then have people you can lean on with questions. I want to mention, guys, I do a live stream on YouTube very rarely, but once a month I host a free live stream to my newsletter subscribers. If it's for a Q&A like this, if you have questions or if you've bought sheep and you're having issues that you just aren't sure how to deal with, it's not just me, but I have 100 to 150 farmers that will come to these private live stream meetups behind the scenes in my newsletter community, 100% free. So use the link down below to subscribe to my newsletter and be a part of those every month. It's a support group. It's to get your questions answered and basically be a lifeline for anybody who is new in farming. So I really enjoy those meetups because, again, like I said, it's not just me, but there are hundreds of people who join with answers to your questions. All right, so Christopher Kolkema asks, what sheep breed is good for wool and dairy? I'm in western Colorado, about 6,000 feet. People are raising Suffolk, Merino, Navajo, and Jacobs. Christopher, you want to be watching. I did an interview with Rachel Hester. She's a dairy sheep breeder, and she will list all of the breeds that's going to be coming out here probably within the next couple weeks on my podcast. It's a great resource. For the meantime, if you are on Instagram, I'm going to give you her Instagram handle. It is Whoopsie Daisy Farm, and she will answer your questions there about dairy sheep. Natasha Dial says, do you try to prevent inbreeding with your sheep? If so, how? Yes, just by rotating out my ram every 2 to 3 years. If I save lambs that are like his daughters, then I'll rotate him out. So I'll breed a ram to its daughter for 1 generation or 2 generations, but nothing past that. So I'll just flip out my ram. And then as far as the ram lambs, I'll just keep them separate, or I'll sell them before they become a risk. All right, Blueface Bull Stag, thank you so much. Says, I love your content. I appreciate that so much. Paz reminds people to hit the like button. Thank you so much, and please do that. All right, I'm going to get to these. There's a couple more questions in the chat, guys, but I'm going to go ahead and, I'm going to go ahead and get to my list here really quick. I'm not going to forget about you, but I'm going to double back after I answer these. All right, Hadley asks, what is your breeding schedule? And the answer is a normal breeding season for me starts October 10th. The ram goes in, and then mid-March to mid-April, all of the lambs come. And that is because I like to lamb with the best grass. Now, last year kind of had a bit of an interesting situation. He basically escaped into the flock in July and stayed there. So we had some early breeding. What happened is that was just fine. I'm in Texas. I don't have piles of snow on the ground. But what happened was those ewes did lamb just a little bit before the grass became good. They were in good condition, so they were able to support and produce a healthy lamb, but they sure got skinny doing it. And again, they recovered just fine because they were recovering on a good spring pasture. But I just don't know if I like them being born. They were born in about December and January. And like I said, they did fine. But I understood at that point in time that there is a reason for lambing on good grass. It's just a lot easier on the ewes. And I only do 1 breeding season, so that's just the spring, for the spring lambing. I know some people do accelerated lambing. Just don't do that. All right, so Shoeless Acres asks, what is your supplemental feed program? As a rule, I don't supplement. Doesn't mean I'm religious about it. It doesn't mean that I won't give my sheep things that they need. But during the spring and summer, it's just a loose mineral and fresh pasture. During the fall and winter, it's a really good quality hay that I buy locally if I don't have the stockpile. Again, keeping loose minerals out year round. Now, Dorpers are known for just putting on pounds with hay and grass only. Supplemental options for other breeds. I've used things like lick tubs in the past when I'm grazing on a really over mature pasture or something that's just shot as far as quality. So it's look into lick tubs. I think Hudson Livestock sells a really good one. And then we used to buy from Tractor Supply just an 18% protein block to keep out free choice year round. And those were the only 2 supplements I used. And I do have to say that during the drought last year, I did supplement. I could find only about 3/4 of the hay that I needed for the year. And hay and grain were about the same price. So I bought a crushed barley, and to stretch it to that 100% of my needs, I did supplement with a little bit of crushed barley. So that is an option for you. Consider that and take all of those and find out what works for you. The main thing you want to do is just keep your sheep in really good body condition. If you can do that on all grass, that is a good sheep, and that's the sheep that I want. But don't starve your animals to meet your goals. That's just not really a good way to do it. That's why I'm not like religious, never supplement, never grain. It just happens that my sheep do really well on that for the most part. But if your sheep need supplement, just get them a supplement. Don't let them starve to death on your goals. All right, so Old School 224 asks, do you have any experience using temporary electric fence netting? Does it protect against coyote? I do have experience with it. I'll keep 2 on property. You guys know that I use the poly tape and not the poly netting. But I do have 2 that I will use as a matter of emergency. My experience with it is that it works really great. It keeps sheep in. I've never had one that has escaped from a well-charged netting. The experience I had with it, that it was really exhausting to move. So if I had to move that every day, I probably would struggle with the idea of my pasture rotation. So I use poly tape and a really high-powered 12-joule charger, and that keeps them in. Does the netting protect against coyotes? I'd have to say yes, just by virtue of what it is. But I've never seen firsthand a coyote get shocked by it and moved on. Okay. I have got 5 more questions on my sheet here, guys. Leave them in the comments before I leave tonight. I'm going to answer these questions and then finish up. All right. Ayer Mayan says he's starting on 23 acres. What is the best way to turn forest into pasture? I only know this as a result of touring polyface farms, but polyface farms put all of their pigs in the forest. They rooted out the forest area, made it a flat bed for grass seed that was going to come in later, and that's what they used, was pastured pigs in the forest, for the forest areas. You know, from a practical standpoint, I'd have to say be careful for some predator protection on that, so make sure you have predator protection if you're going to put a bunch of bacon in the forest. So, but that's what I saw at Polyface. All right. So Life in a Dome asks voltage of your Energizer and its pulse. So I upgraded from solar chargers to a 12 joule AC unit, which is just a plug into the wall unit. 12 joules output, 16 joules stored. One of the best decisions I ever made as far as that goes. The solar chargers are convenient. It was a great way for me to start. I always recommend people getting started with like a 2 joule solar setup if they're just new to electric fencing, but ultimately consider that installing that permanent system and installing a 12 joule charger is what I did on my 30 acres. It is absolutely great. It's great. As far as the pulse on that, it's like give me a thumbs up if you got that pulse. But that's what the pulse is. I'm just repeating what I hear from my barn outlet. All right. NL Terrell says, best advice for a novice getting started. Start small. Start small, learn small, lose small, and then grow from there. You can set your goals as big as you want. I've got this, oh, it's actually right here. Available at shopshepherdess.com. Think big, start small, don't quit. There is no limit to how big you can make your goals. In fact, I recommend setting big goals, but then find the smallest way possible to set out towards your large scale goals, and then don't quit. If you have a vision for something, grow it as you find success, and then if you find absolute failure, at least you didn't waste all your money pursuing something that wasn't meant to be for you. So think big, start small, don't quit. That is absolutely my anthem for anyone doing anything. Livestock, sheep farming, anything. All right, I've got one more question here, and then I'm going to answer your questions in the comments before I leave tonight. All right, so shelter options for rain on pasture. I just make sure that the paddocks have a really good tree in them. If you find that DIY shade structure tutorial here, you can use a material that is waterproof and it'll provide some rain protection for your sheep. But I just make sure they have a good tree. The rain is not going to hurt them even if they stand out in the middle of it. If it's above 70 degrees, it's just like a warm shower. I mean, think about that. So make sure they have a nice tree that will keep most of it off of them. If it's freezing rain, and then I'll just put them in a shelter. I'll drive them to our main shelter, but warm rain is just like a good warm shower, which is probably they need every once in a while, so. All right, guys, I'm going to answer your questions here. Thank you so much for spending some time with me tonight. I really appreciate it and enjoyed it. Just remember that I host these live stream meetups every month, the 4th Thursday of every month, not here on YouTube, but in a private community that you can access for free using my newsletter down in the description. So join the newsletter if you guys want to be part of these Q&As on a regular basis. Please do that. Pamela Cherney says, are you using polywire, not netting? Yes, Pamela, I use polywire, polytape, and there is a difference between polytape and polywire. So be very specific about that when you're shopping. The tape is going to be about 5/8 inch wide. The wire is going to be like a little string. I use the tape. It's a 1/2 inch tape, and that's very important. All right. I Love Sheep says, I had Katahdin last year and we bred them with a Dorper. That's a great combination. Mark says, great show. Thank you so much. Dan says, Virginia, and he's raising cattle. I Love Sheep asks, did any of your sheep die from coccidiosis? Yeah, they did. And they even died. I mean, you see this picture. That's pretty extreme. I had 1 year later implemented a rotational grazing program. The bums were clean, but they had what was called a subclinical case of coccidiosis. It was really wet that year, and the symptoms I noticed were that their little backsides were getting skinny and shrunken, and their bellies were getting really big, and so they had it even though they weren't showing it in diarrhea. And the answer is yes, they die, and they die really slowly, unfortunately. So catching it early and dosing it with some of this has been some of the best treatment I have done for that coccidiosis. This is available at shepherdess.com, and you can get this. I really like it. So, but yeah, they'll die of coccidiosis, and they'll die a long, painful death. Typically, what happens is, like I said, the parasite eats holes in their intestine. The nutrients leach out of their intestine. They die even though they have plenty to eat. It's very pathetic. It's a very pathetic way to watch a sheep die. R Rentiera 777 says, what do you recommend as far as goats in East Texas? Clarify what you mean as far as, do you mean like a breed or treatment? A lot of the treatments for sheep cross over to goats. As a spoiler, I do have about 4 goats right now. I use this on them, and I also use the Cydectin dewormer on them. The dosage rates will be different for goats. I think it's about double for goats what it is for sheep. That's at least what I do on my farm. So, but as far as a breed recommendation, right now I'm running a Boer Alpine cross. My friend Carl Abel runs a Boer Spanish cross meat goat. Mark says, South Louisiana, driving trucks, saving for fencing, and saving to build fence. Way to go, Mark. If you can get your fences in place, it's going to be an much easier road. Keep pressing the wrong button. Earl Vidler asks, any concerns with first-time pasture? Earl, I think the only concern would be quality concern. I addressed this again to plug the book, which Lord willing is going to come out in August. I have a whole chapter on supplementation, but I'm just going to give you the information right here. I would put them on that pasture, watch body condition, but I would provide them with like a lick tub. And what lick tubs are is they supplement. Usually an overmature pasture is really high in protein. It's got a lot of forage that's high in what's called a lignin. Lignin makes it really hard for the sheep to extract energy out of the plant. And what the lick tub does is it sits on pasture. It's basically a big blob of sugar and protein supplement. And so by having just a little bit of that lick tub and then a whole lot of that low quality forage that they'll probably find on a low quality pasture, their diet comes in balance and their body condition stays good. So you want to supplement with that. All right. Mark Rodriguez says 94 watching and 74 thumbs up. Pretty good ratio. Thank you so much. Please hit the thumbs up button if you have not already. It would really, really cheer me up tonight. Cat S says, yep, that's what I'm doing. Thin trees, pigs, and grass seed. So far, so good. All right. Cycle for Life 12 says, is it profitable to farm multiple species together with a rotational grazing system? Cattle, goats, and sheep. I have 80 acres of pasture that are being replanted. Cycle for Life 24. Profitability relies very heavily on your market. So when I have a video about this, and it's called How to Find Customers for Your Farm, you want to start backwards In any farm enterprise, you want to start backwards. You want to find your market first. So here's a profitable scenario for you. If you're going multi-species grazing with cattle, goats, and sheep, and you have a market that is interested in meat from all of those animals, yeah, it's going to be really profitable for you to do that. Another scenario is my friend Carl Abel. He runs cattle and goats, and his operation, it works together in that it seems like when the cattle are high, the goat prices are low, and when the goat prices are high, the cattle prices are low. So if you're selling to a commodity market, having that variety on your pasture is going to really help with those cattle cycles, those dips in prices that do happen. Cattle cycle in 10 to 12 year cycles, meaning that they'll hit an all-time high like they are right now, and then they'll have like 10 years of just a slow descent, and then they'll hit the bottom at 10 years, and then they'll climb for another 10 years, 10 to 12 year cycles. Sheep cycle in 5 to 7 year cycles. So we will hit an all-time record high like we saw in 2021, and then we'll slowly descend for 5 years, and then we'll hit rock bottom in about 5 years, and then slowly climb. That's what a cattle cycle is. And so if you have two species, you'll likely have one that's running a high when the other one has a low, and it'll be a more profitable situation just for that variety. All right, I'm losing daylight, guys, but I'm going to try and get to the rest of your questions here. Alex Barnes, just had my first 2 lambs board in mid-May. Dorper, Katahdin cross, started with 1 ram and 3 ewes. Love that ratio. That probably felt really, really good. Congratulations. All right, so WA says, been watching your videos for about a year and a half, hoping to get land with house sometime soon, but the housing market and interest rates, now it's been hard. Yeah, my dad could talk better on the housing market and interest rates. Dad, if he's gonna buy a house,
Yeah.
when does he want to buy it? This year, or does he want to wait?
Well, I think that they'll be forced eventually to lower interest rates, but they could go up in the short term. Could go up to 7.5 or so, I think.
Yeah.
But
So
long term, I think it'll be forced to drop them again.
long term, forced to drop them.
Well, long term is in next 5 years.
Yeah. So next 5 years. So if you were gonna buy a house, or if you were like in the market for a house, what would you do?
Well, I am in the market for another house, but I'm going to wait until the end of next year and see where we're at.
He's gonna wait till the end of next year to buy a house. So keep that in mind if you are. My dad's been around the block several different times, so I would take his advice on buying a house. Double Down says, is that a green screen? Love that room. This is not a green screen. If you missed the first part, I am out of power at my farm. This is my dad's office. If you guys want to buy some of his antique collectible paraphernalia, you guys can, but this is his office. But not a green screen. All right, Shelly says, Southeast Texas picking up my starter flock from you on Monday. Can't wait, Shelly. They are waiting, and I am so excited for you to have them. All right, Daniel Smith says, are you running the goats with the sheep or separate? The goats have no permanent place on my pasture because they are so disrespectful of my polytape. I do not know where they're at any given moment. They're jumped out of the paddock, and they are wherever they want to be. So they're supposed to be with the sheep, but they're on probation right now. They're probably going to get sent back to prison, which means they're going to be sold. All right, so Diego Bradford says, have goats already and want to add sheep for personal meat. What type of sheep in South Texas would be best for meat? Diego, if you're in South Texas, the Dorper is going to be a great choice for you. It is great in the hot and dry weather, and they are huge sheep. All right, Farm the Heart says, you're always pleasant to watch. Can't wait for the book. Thank you so much. Very encouraged by that. Will you be sharing or breaking down your marketing strategies and how to diversify again? Yes, in a bunch of videos. I'm going to be really focusing on that. If you guys watched my last video, you will know scaled, by God's grace, the farm business here from 0 to 100,000 in about 3 years. That included a ton of diversity. Now, it did not include YouTube. It didn't include any of the media stuff or media income, but it included a lot of diversity. You're always hearing me shout out things like shepherdess.com for the best supplies for your sheep, shepherdess.com for the best books to figure out how to raise sheep. That is included in my on-farm diversity. It's income I can earn straight from the farm without leaving the farm, being a farmer, but it adds to my farm income. I'm talking a lot about that because It's really hard to do what I'm doing right now. It's very uncertain to do what I'm doing right now. You've got live animals who could get sick, and your income could be down from those things. And so having a very diversified business model, for me personally, I don't think I'd have the sanity to be a farmer without it. And so I'm going to be talking a lot about that. All right, the says, please say hello to Frostproof Florida. Hello, Frostproof Florida. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. WA says, thanks, Dad. Daniel Potter says, will the book be applicable to other breeds, not just the Dorpers? This is an issue I've run into, finding great info with other books. So much info doesn't apply to beginners, hare, sheep. So Daniel, the health section of this book is at the back. It's going to really specifically apply to Dorpers and a lot of the health issues I have encountered with them. But the information in this book is things like how to set up a rotational grazing program, how to keep sheep in, just general information that is not breed specific. So this is going to apply to all sheep, hair sheep, wool sheep, anything. And at the very back of the book, I'm going to talk about the health issues specifically I have managed in Dorper, etc. So it's going to be all sheep, but the Dorper sheep specific stuff is going to be at the back. It's a 250-page book, so it's huge. All right, Sam and Jared Turner, can sheep and cattle go well in pasture? Yes, Sam and Jared, I have sheep and cattle in my pasture right now, never caused any problems for each other. The cattle have never deliberately harmed my sheep. In fact, they have run predator protection for me. My mama cows, when they drop those calves, do not want a dog in the pasture at all. They'll even run off our pet dogs. And so I can only imagine they're doing the same thing for wild dogs. The only problem I've ever had is with my sheep causing some mayhem. My sheep are the troublemakers, and they'll eat the cow's supplement, so I have to supplement my cattle separately whenever I do so. Happenings at Lumgo Farms. Guys, we're hitting close to an hour. I'm going to go ahead and close it out here. We've got 2 more questions I'm going to answer, and then we're going to close it out. Happenings at Lamgo Farms, Dallas, Texas area, our 2nd year with Baby Doll South Downs and mini Harlequins. The early heat is horrible. Yeah, it's kind of crazy what we've had here. All right, Farm the Heart says, I remember your first video. What a journey. I've been following and learning with you, not scaling you yet, but that is on the way. Thank you so much. Jamette says, go Grace. Thank you so much. WA says, I've also listened to 2 of Joel Salatin's books. Very good. Will you be going into any homestead conventions in Missouri? None in Missouri are planned. I don't have any on the plans for that. All right. Thank you guys so much for being here tonight. Please, before you leave, hit the like button on this video and also subscribe to my newsletter. I am so excited to be talking a little bit more about the basics of raising sheep on pasture, which is the project for which I took a month off of YouTube. I am so excited about it. It's a book that doesn't just talk about what to do. You're not going to open it and see a million pages of scribbles. You're going to see primarily photos. It's a photo documentary of raising sheep on pasture. Basically how I went from beginner to what you see on the channel right now, how I adapted a lot of the information that's out there for cattle to raising sheep. You're going to see it in pictures and step-by-step instructions. It's going to be basically like opening up a book and watching my YouTube channel. I'm so incredibly thrilled. Subscribe to my newsletter down below, and we will, Lord willing, be launching on August 15th. Thank you guys so much for spending 53 minutes and 4 seconds with me tonight. I look forward to seeing you, hopefully at that private live stream that I host that you'll get notifications for on my newsletter. Thank you guys and have a great night.